Welcome to the Jedburgh podcast. I'm the creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Each episode, I speak with transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, and those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge. The Jedburgh podcast is founded in the lineage of the special operations Jedburgh teams of the past and is produced in partnership with Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm focused on helping you optimize the people side of your business. We're sponsored by Jersey Mike's Subs. Together, we share the mission of giving, making a difference in someone's life. Visit the Jedburgh Podcast, Talent War Group, and Jersey Mike's Subs on the web and on all social media. A percentage of all proceeds is dedicated to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families. Jen, welcome to the Jedburgh Podcast, guerrilla style.
Yeah, I love this.
We're improvising here. We took over the Modballs booth. All right, they told us that we had to do podcasts over on the stage, but here's my opinion. Jessie and I finished our podcast on the stage for the week, so now tell us we can't.
Oh, you guys are breaking the law.
Rules are meant for other people.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
I'm good with that.
I think the important thing about rules is to understand why they were designed, and they're usually for safety. And if you have the skills to do something safely, then the rule maybe wasn't meant for you.
This feels safe. I'm in a safe place.
Yeah, we're safe here for sure.
I feel good about it. So thank you so much for sitting down with us. All right, we have lots to discuss. We're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about your career. We're going to talk about longevity in not only athletics, but certainly in CrossFit. We just got out of the ice bath, which that was my first time in there. And
Was it really?
It was. I owe a case of beer now. That's the rule. If you admit to it being your first time for anything, you owe a case of beer.
I don't know if I support this rule.
Well, I think Jessie's had a few firsts this weekend. First CrossFit
That's probably
event.
true. I make a point of having many firsts.
It's a lot of cases of beer.
Well, she's not going to take the beer, so we'll get her like protein shakes or something.
Yeah, I got you guys a lot of coffee.
Yes, that's true. Got a lot of coffee. So it's been an awesome couple of days. We're in day 4, wrapping up here in a couple hours. You have been competing over the last couple of days, but have suffered, unfortunately, having a slight injury to withdraw. But we're not going to focus on that because that doesn't matter because we're focused on tomorrow. But let's talk about for a second the experience here at Wodapalooza. You're a seasoned vet. We have to admit that it's our first time for both of us here, so we owe you beer. But talk about what it's like being here, being back, the experience, and why it's so unique in the industry.
This atmosphere is amazing. Just being in this downtown Miami outdoor facility that they basically just put together for this weekend it's phenomenal. There is no other CrossFit event like this, and the community really comes together. I mean, even like especially at night under the lights here in downtown Miami.
That's the coolest part.
Isn't it?
It's absolutely the coolest
part.
You've
got the dancing thing lady lit up on like one building, and then just the lights everywhere. The music, like the Miami music, you feel like you're at a nightclub just fitnessing. And whether you're a spectator, whether you're an athlete, like you feel that energy. And no matter how tired you are, even if you're competing at 8:30 at night, it doesn't matter. When you step out there is no other CrossFit event, even at the games, like being in the Coliseum, it's amazing. But this atmosphere is just phenomenal.
Agreed.
No, 100% agree. You should see the long discussions that we had just around what our branding was going to be changed to and what we're going to incorporate for all of these episodes that we've done here, because I was so hard on, I want the Miami theme. I'm like, I want the neon lights. I don't know what it looks like. Someone has to tell me what it looks like, but I need like neon lights. I need something with a palm tree, and we have to embody what this atmosphere and this feeling is, and it's so lived up to the whole experience. Let's talk about you for a couple of minutes. We had the opportunity just before coming here to sit down with Don Fall, CrossFit CEO, talk about his vision for CrossFit. Talk about, because he just took over in August. where it's going, why it's so important, the community that sits around it. Talk for a few minutes about why you've embraced CrossFit the way that you have throughout your career, what it's done for you, and what you've seen that impact be across the fitness community.
Yeah, I believe I've really embraced it because I've always wanted to be an athlete. Growing up, I was always involved in team sports, always playing a sport, and I just never found my niche, right? I was never great at just one thing, and I was always searching for something. And then even in my 20s, I was exercising, I was fitnessing, right? I loved fitness. And I don't think I was doing it for the right reasons, and I was trying to be something I wasn't. So when I found CrossFit, I fell in love with it because it was all about your performance. Didn't matter how you looked, it didn't matter what age you were, it didn't matter your gender, it didn't matter what your background was. If you could show up and do the work, and if you were a hard worker, it was going to pay off. And for me, I've embraced this whole CrossFit community and CrossFit as a sport because I've been able to change my outlook on everything about myself and about other people by focusing more on what we can do, my performance, right? Like how wonderful is, how grateful I am for my body because of what it can do instead of what it looks like. And I think especially as young women, we are focused on fitness and exercise to figure out what we can look like and to focus on that. And CrossFit has taught me, and what I'm able to teach other young women and men to focus on is what your body can do. And that creates this confidence that is you can't even compare it. My confidence level in myself, and not from a egotistical type of way, but in a healthy way. I have a healthier mindset about myself than I ever did growing up and all the way through my early 30s. So I just think CrossFit really lifts people up. Everyone is about building each other up, supporting each other, and focusing on what you can do. And that is just, it's so amazing to have that type of support from people.
Yeah, I love hearing that that's something people get from CrossFit too, because that was such a huge shift in my life as well. I think I had that when I was a kid and I was in gymnastics and pole vaulting. It was all about performance and what can I do. Yep. And there was this period of being a young adult, especially in stunts, where there's so much pressure to look a certain way and to be a certain size. And so much of my training, as much as I was still working on skills, so much of my training was about like, how do I fit this mold of looking the right way? And it can be so soul sucking, and it takes the joy out of fitness. And when with Ninja, I was able to shift back to how strong can I get? Look how amazing it is. I beat myself from last week. I beat myself from the week before. Again, I keep getting stronger. It builds this confidence. And Ninja isn't for everyone, but like, it seems like CrossFit is something that is so accessible. I absolutely agree with you. I think it is accessible. Not everyone has to do what the competitive athletes are doing, but you can still be an athlete going in, and if you're going in and doing the workout with other people, you're still being an athlete, and you don't have to look a certain way, and I think teaching people to be strong and feel strong is just awesome. I always, ever since I started coaching in CrossFit, I would encourage people of all ages to get to a competition, a local competition, because for that mom who is still trying to find herself, or that dad who maybe the man who misses college, high school sports, when you get out on that floor, and it doesn't matter if it's an in-house, your own local gym's competition, I have seen that just change people. Like, they are out on that floor and suddenly people are cheering for them, or if it's a team event and their teammates cheering for them, it brings out, I'm like getting excited talking about it. I feel it.
It brings out the coolest emotions and the feelings in someone who maybe feels like they've lost themselves, or they didn't have any other value, or they weren't sure why they were doing things, and you see it in them when they are out there.
And it's just, if you ever have a chance to go to even a local competition and see these first time people or the people who don't consider themselves athletes or competitors, you get to see them. It's really neat. You can see it happening out there. You can see the mom who, she hasn't had this chance in forever. You can see, like I said, the person who played high school or college sports and misses it, and they're getting that again. And it's so cool because you feel it too. Yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah. Tell me about how you became I guess you've always been a person who wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. What was that journey of finding, how am I going to help people right now? Because you were a nurse for a while, right?
I was, yeah. So
are you still a nurse?
I'm not practicing at the bedside right now.
Okay.
No, stepped away from that, which is a nice feeling. I miss the crazy peers that I had in the ER, but...
What kind of nurse were you?
I was an ER nurse.
Yeah.
I started in 2009, and I stepped away from the bedside about a little over a year ago.
So everybody who's getting ready to become a special operator, go to selection for whether it's going to be a Green Beret, Navy SEAL, you want to become an Army Ranger, you want to join the Air Force, become a pararescueman, right? They can come to you, hop on 18 Alpha Fitness app, and you're going to take them through some very specific workouts that are designed for each one of those training programs.
I always start off everybody day one of 18 Alpha Fitness is my push-up from hell. Spider-Man push-ups. So on a down position, your left knee comes to your left elbow. Right knee comes to your right elbow. Yeah. Next one is diamonds, everybody's favorite. And make sure you get that chest off that ground. All right, wide arm. Be on your knee. This is the knee one, but you're gonna go down and explode up.
You want to take it to the next level. You want to be one of America's best. Get on 18 Alpha Fitness. Check it out.
So
It's one of the most difficult jobs. People forget, I think, so many times about the importance of ER nurses, ER docs, but I truly believe that they're the best because the variety of things that you see in any one shift is across such a spectrum, and it requires not only medical skill, but really strong emotional and mental strain. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you get and see it all in the emergency department, and I've been blessed to work in level 1 trauma centers and very places, ERs in the middle of a crazy hectic big city, and you have to have a lot of compassion and empathy for what you're doing. That doesn't mean that we don't get a little frustrated, just like everyone, but I had to learn patience, and that was hard. But I don't know when I made the turn to wanting to really help and care for people. It's really interesting that you asked that, because when I was in nursing school, I remember my grandmother saying to me, "Jen, I really never pictured you as a nurse." And I don't know if that was a bad thing. I don't know if it was, I'm not really sure if I was always just a self-care kind of person. I don't know what she really meant by that. I think she meant she was very surprised that I was going to be caring for other people. But it was really what I wanted to do. I thought that was my calling and my way into helping other people with health. So that was my first love, was health and fitness. So, back in my 20s, early 20s, CrossFit wasn't a thing at the time. And even, nutrition coaching and all of this stuff, that wasn't a big thing.
So when did you discover that and realize you wanted to transition to more helping people outside of the hospital?
I believe it was when I started coaching CrossFit. I moved out to San Diego December of 2012, and I started coaching at CrossFit Pacific Beach along with being a nurse. And I just started realizing how much I loved it. I just loved being hands-on with the people who wanted to better themselves. And so I felt more valued. Sometimes people who come into the ER, they don't
they don't really want to better themselves. I'm just there for their acute care, which is fine, and we need that. But I didn't feel as valued. And when you're helping people who are coming to you to be better, you start to feel a lot more value. And so I found more confidence in myself. I found that I was valuable to other people in that way. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hands-on. So I started doing, personal training sessions, and then people wanted some help with nutrition. I wanted to learn more about, the dietary side of health when it came to performance and body composition. So I really started digging into nutrition, and I found that I could help people with that, right? There's just, it almost does kind of sound selfish, but in helping others and taking care of other people, I felt really good about myself in a way that used to mean I could only feel good about myself if I looked in the mirror and saw what I liked, or if I put on a size 00 from Abercrombie. That was how I judged my self-worth, and that wasn't helping anyone else. So when I could hear that I was helping someone else, or when I could see someone else's happiness, it was kind of like, oh, this makes me feel good. And if making myself feel good means making other people feel good, that's a much better feeling than just making yourself feel good by the way you look in the mirror, right? It's so much different. And that's where I found the value of CrossFit and the value of helping other people.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that, like, if I'm injured and in a position where I can't be pushing my limits and I'm not feeling good about how I'm improving myself, I start to worry more about how I look. And it's like realizing that I need to have that value, that self-value, from how I'm having an impact. Like, there's a million different ways that you can value yourself, but if you can base it in something that's helping the world, it takes so much of the focus off of, like, the silly, less important things.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed this or if you've come across it, but I liken it to, it is challenging from an emotional side of things to dig into bettering ourselves and figuring out what really does make us happy and the why. And instead of focusing on ourselves, it is a little easier to focus on others, and then that makes us feel good. And what I compare that to sometimes as a parent, oftentimes like mothers who I work with, they grow up and, go through 20s and have the same feelings a lot of women do, is these self-image issues and just questioning things, right? And then you have children and you're able to just throw yourself into all of that and not focus as much on yourself. And we become caregivers. And that's not the same. Men do the same thing, right? We become caregivers where it's like, well, my value is put in someone else. But I think we do it sometimes to not have to focus on ourselves. Because when we are valuable to someone else, it makes us feel good, and we can shift away from some of those negative thoughts about what we used to think made us feel good. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I also do think that I do have to self-reflect, and when I am feeling good about myself from helping someone else, I have to remember that I still, when I don't have anyone else, when I have, people who, like, clients who maybe are having a bad day and I'm like, oh, is this my fault? Now I'm going to feel bad about myself. I also have to remove that from it and say, no, Jen, you are still valuable. You are still of worth. Do not feel bad about yourself, Yeah. And I think that's similar with parenting sometimes too.
Fueling our bodies for peak performance is one of the most important parts of our preparation. It's also one of our most difficult choices. We live in a world full of options like energy drinks, shots, gels, and snacks. Modballs is the natural choice. Just a 20-gram Modball packs 10 times more energy per gram than the other options, and they're safe for active kids, adults, and athletes. Macronutrients from 75 fruits, veggies, seeds, nuts, chocolate, and raw honey replace caffeine and sugar, increasing energy without creating a jittery stimulant buzz or sugar crash. Plus, Modballs are only 100 calories. They're individually wrapped, organic, vegan, dairy-free, soy-free, gluten-free, HFCS-free, and GMO-free. They're also $10 off your first order when you use code JED, J-E-D, at modballs.com.
One of the terms that you put on it was the importance of silencing your inner critic. And I think that when we talk about development, we talk about whether we're building ourselves or our teams, our family, our business, becoming an athlete, it doesn't matter what we're doing. It really has to start with there. I talk a lot about humility, right? And the ability to look inside, and take an honest assessment. But we also can't beat ourselves up all the time. And we were talking about this yesterday because I was unhappy with one of my performances and was beating myself up all night. But we got to understand the context. But that critic lives inside of us, and when we talk to really the highest performing athletes, that it's constantly in the back of their head where they're saying, what else can I do? What didn't I do? And you can go out there and have an amazing workout, an amazing performance, and then still come back and say, well, I didn't do this, and this. Yeah. Next time I got to go do it. Talk about that in your own training. And as you've progressed through CrossFit, through your career, competed, last year we were talking about you in the team division, taking 6th in the team.
Elite division.
No, yes, the elite team taking 6th. But, how have you incorporated that thought process into your own training?
That's a really good question, and you bring up a very good point amongst not only elite athletes, but anyone who's really driven in any area of life. It can be a blessing and a curse. Obviously, that's why people become so successful, because we're not complacent. We don't just rest on our laurels. We're always thinking about doing something else. I have a hard time taking a compliment, and that probably comes from my own, maybe not lack of confidence, but my own drive to always feel the need to be a perfectionist and to be better. So it used to really affect me, whether that was in training and if I had a bad day, or if I didn't have a perfect day, I was putting myself down, I was stressing over it, I didn't do this or that. And that can start to affect your happiness in the sport or just in anything in general. So when I do something well, I try to celebrate that, whether it's in training or in competition. But then I'm also looking at, okay, well, here are the things that I could probably fix, but trying to look at it from a positive standpoint. Even just to bring up a recent example, on Friday on the clean and jerk, we had 3 attempts, 20-second lifting window with a 90-second rest. So you have 3 attempts. So I opened at 205, and my plan was to go 205, 215, 220. Well, I missed the first jerk at 205. So I went back down to 195, made it, and then went up and hit 210. So my coach texted me afterwards, and he was like, that was amazing, your 210 clean and jerk. That clean looked so easy and money. Your handstand hold was amazing. That was a PR max, like freestanding handstand hold for me. That clean and jerk, while it wasn't what I wanted to hit, obviously, because it was not what I had planned. I've not ever made a jump from 195 to 210 on a clean and jerk in competition before and felt that I was confident enough to do it. Normally, my mindset after having missed something like that would have been, I didn't do things great, I can't do this, I'm too little, I won't have confidence in myself, but I was, and I made that jump. So when he gave me that compliment, my first comment back was, yeah, but I missed my first jerk at 205, and that was terrible, And in my head, I was like, that's not the right thing to do, Jen. Take the compliment. You're a coach who's known you since 2016 and is very, he'll tell it to you like it is. He was giving me a compliment. And instead, I couldn't take the compliment. I could only find what I did wrong. And that is something to still reflect on. I haven't perfected that mindset yet. It's always a work in progress. So I don't know if that's just always going to be a part of, someone who is an elite athlete and really always trying to better themselves, or if it's, something that it's something I can work on. But I do go back to it. I fall back into those old ways sometimes of thinking, I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. I need to be doing more.
Yeah. On a particularly bad day where you find many things that you could work on, what are some of the small victories that you have to remind yourself of that you can feel good about?
Mindset during a workout. So I do tell my own teammates, the people I train with, or even myself during a hard workout, or if you're feeling bad going into it and you're just not going to be able to hit the certain like calories on the machine or something, right? I'll say, do what you can to get something out of it. Like, what can you get out of it? Can I get transitions out of this? Great. If I can't do the movement unbroken, or if I'm not able to do something, what can I improve on today? Where is my mindset? And so when things aren't going well or I'm feeling crummy, it's just telling myself, what can you do to get better? This is going to happen in competition, so what can you do that's different than someone else? And then I'm deciding, all right, I'm going to get the calories that I can on a machine. I'm going to push my transitions. I'm going to try to do this movement unbroken. Things like that I've really learned over the past like year and a half, 2 years, to try to focus on as opposed to the negatives.
Really quick, what do you mean by transitions?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
So like transitions between movements. So if you're practicing an event, a workout, or just doing a workout that's programmed for you, are you purposeful moving from one thing to the next? Mm-hmm. You'll hear it talked about often from like the announcers in CrossFit, or just like from an analytical perspective, or even your coaches will talk about, hey, these transitions, they can make up time.
Yeah.
And so especially on the competition floor, when pieces of equipment are spread out, sometimes that run back and forth, that becomes an added movement, and that can add seconds. So if you are purposeful moving from one thing to the next, it's a change for you, right? If you're not lollygagging, you're not feeling sorry for yourself between the movements, you have a purposeful transition between movements. And I think that's a big win. If you can practice that in training, it carries over to competition, because you know, hey, no matter how bad this movement is sucking, I need to remember I've got more of this workout. And the next thing, I need to purposefully move to the next thing.
I'll give you one more in that translates into a lot of things you do in life. I mean, I talk to executives and I coach executives, and one of the things I tell them all the time is, when you go from one meeting to another meeting, so often what we do is we pick up our phones, we put our head on the phone, and we run into the door in the next meeting. And what I always say is, stop at the door, 5 seconds, maybe 3. And just take that quick pause and say, what am I going into this meeting? Who's going to be in there? What am I doing? And what's the goal? And if you can just ask yourself that one thing, even if you don't think about it that long, and then you walk through the door, you will enter with purpose. You'll enter with focus. Whereas if you just run in and it's like, oh, hey, what's going on? What are we doing? Okay, I put my phone down. Your head's still behind. So that translates, that intention, that deliberate attitude translates into so many different things that you do in life. Can we talk about nutrition?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, can we start a little bit like you were telling me your misconceptions when you first became interested in nutrition? Because I think that's so applicable for so many people who want to get healthier. They've heard about some diet and they start following this thing that may not be right for them, may not even be accurate, and how that can, be counterproductive for your health, and what you discovered along the way.
Yeah, it started many years ago. So I'm 43, right? So as we've talked about, so my nutrition journey, my dietary journey started as a teenager. The whole low-fat diet fad was going on in my teens, so I really dug into that. And then, going through my 20s, you had Atkins, you had low carb, and then you had the low fat again, and just trying to figure out, okay, is it the fat that's not good for me? Is it the carbs that's not good for me? Is it just eating way, way less in general? I went through all of it, and none of it was right for me. None of it really fit, because I was still unhappy, and I was still stressed out about figuring out, what do I need to do for myself? So I really found that once I started focusing more on fueling myself for performance, realizing how food can make me feel better, not just from a like emotional dopamine hit, right? Comfort food, but how eating enough of the right foods can help my energy levels, performance in the gym. I'm stronger. I am starting to look the way that I wanted to, like a strong woman. That was a big turning point. But I struggled for a really, really long time. I struggled with an eating disorder from a very young age until probably the age of like 37, right? So that's a very long time trying to figure things out. And it's kind of all come full circle, me helping other people in that journey and trying to decipher what is the right approach, because there are so many different approaches out there and people want to try every single one. And I don't judge that, right? I did a lot of that too. But none of it really served me well, besides to become very experienced in all the wrong things.
Yeah, as far as diet, doing things to an extreme can bring extra challenges.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about why is a very low-fat diet counterproductive? Or how can it be harmful?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. And this comes down to also, it can depend, right? Depending on context for the person, what their goals are and what period of time they are in their life and their years, and what their athletic goals are. A very low fat diet, the issue with that is, our hormones, the precursor to our hormones is cholesterol, right? So from dietary fats. Now, of course, the body can make some of that on its own, but we do need some dietary fats in order to help support our hormonal profile. It's very important. And so when I see, people who are consistently eating extremely low-fat diets for a long period of time, you're not supporting these, your sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. You're not supporting all of these things that we need that for. And some, dietary fats, some of them can be very helpful for inflammation too. So I think what you're going to see is when people do very, very low fat, they also end up being low calorie quite often, right? And again, that just starts to add up as well. Short periods of time, that happens for those who are into, physique sports. That's fine. That does happen. But remember, when you're seeing a lot of those people who get on stage who do end up, down to almost like trace fats, right? Like not adding any extra fats for a period of time, ask them how they feel. Ask them about their lab work and their hormonal profile. It is completely tanked. It is. That's just how it goes. And that also goes along with the fact that they're eating very low calorie, probably very high output. So it's not just one thing. It doesn't have to just be the low fats. It's kind of a plethora of things that will add to that. You also are going to have, some CrossFit athletes who are eating very high calories of their carbohydrates, because that is the primary preferable, fuel source for the body. If they're eating a lot more carbohydrates and moderate protein, then yes, fats might be a little bit lower. But if they're keeping it extremely low for a very, very long period of time, again, we can start to see some hormonal issues. But it's not just the isolated, extremely low fats. It's the combination of everything, right? Your calories, how you're recovering, right? How much activity you're doing. So it depends in context. I wouldn't say it's just that one thing of very low fat, but we have to remember that fats are not bad for us. Fats are not scary. It's important for us to have dietary fats.
Yeah. What are some of the important functions of fat for your brain and your body and your cells? Why do we need some fat in our diet, and what are the best healthy sources of fat? We don't want to be going out and getting deep fried foods or necessarily, but where can we get healthy? Right. I'm not saying.
Hey, wait a second.
But I mean, if you are aiming for optimal health and you thought that you needed to be super low fat, where do you want to get those healthy fats, and what do they do for you?
Yeah. Healthy fats I tend to recommend for people are going to be, fatty fish, nuts and seeds. I love chia seeds, hemp seeds. Walnuts are wonderful. Brazil nuts are a great source of fat. Brazil nuts have selenium, so that's going to help testosterone. That's going to help support your thyroid. I also will recommend, so if you're looking for certain oils, I'm recommending usually flaxseed oil, avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil. Those are the really good oil sources if you're looking for that. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Coconut oil. You know, you don't have to do a plethora of coconut oil. There's a lot out there, and I won't call myself an expert in this whole, area or debate. But I don't think we need to load up on, all kinds of coconut oil, like was once, not too long ago, that was the big rage, right? Like eat scoopfuls of coconut oil and everything. And I think moderation of all of it is important.
Yeah.
Other fat sources. Let's see, what else do I tell people?
I had heard for a little while that coconut oil was bad because it has saturated fats, but saturated fats are important too, right?
Right.
In moderation.
Right. So that's the thing, is we have to look at this from, and it's the same thing as I was saying with low fat. Is that the only issue? Not always, right? It's probably everything else in combination with it. So the same thing with coconut oil. If you're just having a little bit of it, like a serving of it a day or 2 servings, it's not the worst thing in the world. Is it the best thing in the world to have only, 100 to 200 grams of fat from coconut oil a day? I mean, maybe, probably not.
That's a lot.
But again, depending on the person, right? Depends on everyone's dietary needs. So I like to have a variety. The healthiest gut microbiomes, what did they do? A study on it. What was it, like 36 to 40 different foods a day? Oh my gosh, I really wish I could remember this because I learned about it. Just read it over, and it was very interesting that the variety of food that you can get within a day is actually very helpful for your gut microbiome. And a lot of us, as much as we like to think, I don't want to just follow something in particular, I don't want to only eat these foods, a lot of us kind of fall into the same, probably 20 foods a week. Think about it, right? And so I challenge a lot of people that I work with to venture out. Hey, let's try 2 or 3 different foods this week. Let's get some variety. So if somebody really likes just coconut oil, okay, if I'm seeing that 2 or 3 times a day on their food logs, that's not a bad thing. I'm not gonna be you're never gonna make progress. No, my challenge to them is, hey, let's try to add another source of fat, or where else can we switch this up for overall health benefits and taste and flavor and just altering things.
One of the biggest challenges we have in building great organizations is accurately identifying the strengths and weaknesses of our team and our teammates. Compass Workforce Solutions is a certified predictive index partner. Since 1955, the Predictive Index Behavioral Assessment has objectively provided insight into employees' workplace behaviors. This allows us as leaders to predict what drives and motivates others, helps us to be better managers, and enables more effective communication to increase performance by really understanding who's on our team and what they do best. I've incorporated Predictive Index, Compass, and Christine Ippolito's team into every one of my businesses and my performance development programs. Incorporate science-backed behavioral assessment tools like Predictive Index into your organization today and see how quickly you reach your goals. Learn more about Compass and the Predictive Index Behavioral Assessment at compasswfs.com.
Yeah, I know I definitely get stuck in the same pattern just because I really like my food to be easy.
Yep.
And so I've got my standard, I like broccoli, peas and corn, spinach and kale. Those are kind of my go-to vegetables.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's beautiful. But then what I would do is say, just take one of those, and then I'll teach people, if they're tracking something, and it's oh man, I just have my easy go-to, so I know what I'm having. Perfect. There are so many foods that are so easily interchangeable and you can swap out, right? So instead of carrots, maybe you're having beets. Or instead of, broccoli, maybe you're doing cauliflower or broccoli slaw.
I'm really into cauliflower rice now.
Yeah, such an easy swap. And is it going to make or break someone's health? No. But there are little variations in some of the micronutrients you're going to get. So what a wonderful way to do that,
Yeah. So I can, to some degree, improve my performance just by switching up. Keeping that same ratio roughly, but switching out one vegetable for another.
Right, and then that's that food quality situation. When you're looking at overall performance and body composition, I mean,
calories are king, right? That's going to be your overall, the overlying thing you're looking at. But you also have to make sure you're keeping everything else internally functioning smoothly. And so that's when we start taking a look at food quality. So yes, altering some of the foods that you're taking in to make sure that you're getting enough of various micronutrients to keep all of these processes functioning well in the body. That's where that comes into play. That could actually improve performance and body composition,
Can you talk about structured versus unstructured eating?
Yeah. So structured eating, in my opinion, is very beneficial when someone's, not when someone's just starting out, but typically when someone is just starting out, they haven't had a lot of practice in nutrition, and their meals are all over the place, their eating's all over the place, maybe they've never tracked anything before. I do think it's very important to help someone find a structure, and that might mean, hey, let's just plan 4 to 5 times of eating a day. Like, how many times do you like to eat a day? Well, if they're like, I don't know, I eat like 3 times. Okay, great. But then what they'll tell me is, well, yeah, so I eat those 3 times, and then, then I'm grabbing things here, I'm grabbing things in the afternoon. There's no structure. They think there's structure, right? So they're telling me there's structure, but that's why they can't achieve their goals of improved health, improved body composition, improved performance, because they don't know what they're taking in. They think they know, and they're going to try to tell you they know. But when you really look at the food log, things are all over the place. So they don't really know. So I think having a structure and just saying, I'll start these people with just saying, look, I don't even need you to hit specific numbers. I just want you to plan out like 5 times of eating a day, right? And we're just going to plan something balanced. And you'd be amazed at how much better people feel. Because when things are unstructured, it's like the rest of life. It's very chaotic. And I think structuring a breakfast, not that breakfast is like the end all be all, you don't have to eat it, but boy, if you can start your day the same way all the time, who doesn't feel like the rest of the day is going to be all right, So helping someone create that structure just sets them up not only for nutrition, like overall health, but just the rest of their life in general,
I'm going to ask you about that in about 3 minutes. FYI.
Yeah, I've definitely found that though. Like, I used to spend so much time thinking about what am I going to eat, and it's so much easier for me to just know that I kind of eat the same thing all the time, so I don't have to think about it.
Yep.
But I also need to have a little more variety. I can follow the same structure with interchangeable pieces.
Yeah, and I think if people understand that, that's what you can fall back on. It's very hard for people to fall back on, okay, you have to hit these calories or these macronutrients when someone's traveling or when life gets super hectic and crazy and you're like, I don't feel like logging, I don't feel like tracking. Things feel like so crazy, but I'm thinking what I will tell people is fall back on just structure a meal. There is nothing wrong with just creating a plate of a protein, a carbohydrate, a veggie, and a fat source. You can't make it a whole lot easier than that, right? Like, get yourself a list of 5 or 6 from each of those, and if you're out to eat or if you're on vacation, just pick something off of a menu or pick something at the store from each of those categories, make a meal out of it like 4 or 5 times a day. I don't even care what the portions are. It doesn't actually matter in those small time frames, right? It's just you knowing you're keeping structure, right? That is a structure. It's not as structured as certain portion sizes, certain amounts. But once someone doesn't have any structure, and you've probably heard this before, maybe done it yourself, it's just a freaking free-for-all, and then it leads to like a whole day of being a free-for-all, and then a week of a free-for-all, where it's just, if you have some sort of structure to pick from, even a loose structure, it's so much more freeing, because you can just say, I'm happy with this. I did okay.
Yeah, I agree. Can you tell us a little bit about the dangers of under-eating? Not just, one of the big ones for me is knowing how much it can slow down your metabolism but functionally and long term as well.
Yeah, again, that's going to be within context, right? And it's going to vary depending on individuals. Some of us are a little more resilient than others. And when someone's eating lower calorie and doing more exercise, right? So you're creating this deficit. When you're doing it for a short period of time, there's probably going to be less of a long-term adaptation. When someone when I get a client who has been exercising for hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, trying to eat, well under their caloric needs, that's when I'm starting to see some of the issues with metabolic adaptation. Their feedback to me, and probably what they're noticing themselves, is going to be low energy levels, waking up feeling completely unrecovered no matter how much they've slept, the inability to sleep, eating really low calorie and not having any hunger. They have no libido, their mood and motivation is very low. Those are some of the, I wouldn't call them dangers, but those are some of the consequences and signs of the fact that, hey, you are probably not giving your body what it needs for how much you're doing. And those are the types of adaptations you're going to see. The next piece to that is you have to remember that when you are bringing your calories down, you are now teaching your body to function off of that lower amount of calories, right? So the body it's very smart. At first, someone might lose some body fat, might lose weight, right? Because the body's got to respond because it's in a deficit. Okay, so you're burning more energy than you're taking in. But again, the body's smart. It wants that homeostasis. It wants to stay where it is. It doesn't want to let go of that wonderful, body fat, because there's more calories, there's more energy in that, So the body's going to slow down various processes, right? So your thyroid is going to start to, talk to the rest of the body, and it's going to slow some of those functions down, And so you start to adapt to that over time. So the longer you do that, your body is going to slow itself down. So if you go from eating 2,000 calories a day at the same energy output, right, the same amount of exercise, and you say, I want to lose some weight. Okay, great. So you go down to 1,700 calories a day. Okay, so that is a calorie deficit. Well, what happens? We end up plateauing, right? So now your maintenance, which used to be 2,000 calories, is now down to 1,700, even though that was a deficit. Well, not any longer, because your body's gotten smart and is like, no, I'm slowing things down. Heck no.
Right, I have to be able to function at this lower.
Yeah, so now you either have to increase more output or you decrease calories. So people tend to do both, right? So then they'll go down to okay, now I'm 1,400 calories. Great, it's a deficit again. Well, at a certain point, your body now notices that as a maintenance, and you're going to plateau because your body has now lost some of that fat, but it's slowed things down even further to say, oh, no, I don't want to lose any more of this, right? And so if you keep going, the problem is then if you sit yourself down there that low, that becomes your maintenance. That's not a danger, but that's a consequence and an effect of trying to eat lower calorie to be in a deficit for an extended period of time, right? And so again, the consequences of that is you're going to start to get that negative feedback from your body. This is probably going to happen no matter what if you're in some kind of a calorie deficit trying to lose weight. But you need to be able to recognize that and know how to get yourself back out of it so that you can also reverse yourself back up. You don't want to sit there forever. You may not be able to go all the way back up again, because if you've lost weight, well, now your maintenance is going to be down a little bit more,
Yeah. So how do you prevent that? If you are eating, say, too many calories for your output, and it is healthy for you to lose weight if you're in that position, how do you lower your intake without lowering your metabolic rate?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to happen. It's not always a bad thing, right?
as long as you're keeping it in perspective. Typically, you want to see a dieting phase go from anywhere from like 12 to 16 weeks. That's just an average. You could go a little less, you could go a little more. But within that time frame, you might be utilizing things like a diet break. So maybe you're taking a week or a couple of days of going back up to maintenance. Sometimes I'll do that with people, and then I'll see them drop back down once we go to the deficit again, where they had plateaued. Once I take a week and say, hey, let's bump you back up, let's kind of upregulate everything, let's give your body a break, and then they'll actually drop again more. And people think that's counterintuitive because they're like, well, but wait, that's going to stall my progress. It's like, no, you're down. Like, we don't need to keep going down just yet. Let's try this. Or you could do like refeeds, right? So you could give yourself a couple more higher calorie days throughout the week. These are just some ways to go about it, but you still have to be moving through your diet phase. So that's kind of the premise and your timeline. So you need to give yourself that. You don't want to go, so what I'll see a lot of people do is they'll go for 6 months trying to be in a diet, but the problem is they can't manage this like 1,000 calorie deficit they've now put themselves in because they want to go from doing like 30 minutes of exercise 4 days a week to like an hour and a half of exercise 6 days a week, and now I'm eating less too. And they try that for 6 months, but 4 of the 6 months they can't handle it, or they can't stick with it, so now they're yo-yoing. So their dieting phase, they're always on a diet. How many people do you meet and they're always on a diet? Unless they're not, and then they're paying zero attention to anything, right? So you have to know what phase you are in. So if you can kind of periodize that and give yourself 12 to 16 weeks for a dieting phase, yes, you're still going to hit some of those adaptations, but you can pay attention to the feedback from your body, and you can know that it's happening, and then maybe you give yourself a little bit more, like a refeed or a diet break, so that you can stay with it. So being purposeful with your approaches is so important, instead of just being like, I'm always on a diet, I'm always trying to lose weight. Because those are the people who yo-yo, right? Or they never make progress and they're spinning their wheels. When you do that, yes, your maintenance is going to come down. Once you hit the body composition you're happy with, then you start to reverse that back up slowly, and then you can build that, that metabolic rate back up again, right? Your maintenance calories.
Yeah. When you say slowly, what's a good factor to go by? Are you thinking like 100 calorie a day increase / decrease, like whichever direction you're going in?
Yeah, depending on the direction you're going in. So it depends, again, on the person, right?
Right.
Some people have a very adaptive metabolism, meaning they will adapt very quickly. Some people, it takes, like, you have to go in a larger deficit or a larger surplus to start seeing changes. And that's just something you have to kind of learn with your own body. But typically when you're reversing back up, if everything's okay, if you're not completely bottomed out, right? And that's, again, paying attention to your feedback from your body, how you're feeling, what you were eating before, you can just start to slowly start adding 100 calories back, 100 to 200 calories every couple of weeks, and then you're paying attention to feedback. Are you going to see the scale go up? You might, but if you're lifting weights, and that's what you want to be doing. When you start taking more calories, you want to be lifting some weights, because you're sending the signal to your body that these calories coming in, hey, let's put that towards building muscle.
So let's talk about Modballs.
Yeah.
I think that we we can edit. So let's talk about Modballs and what the 75 grains are doing for you in your training, how you're using it, and how it is a really strong and in many ways a better alternative to other products out there to get energy and consume energy.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first took a look at Modballs, I was really impressed. Of course, when I first read the ingredients list, I thought, oh my gosh, there's so many ingredients on here, right? That's what a lot of people ask me is, hey Jen, there's a lot of ingredients in here. I was always told the less ingredients, the better. Well, yes, in context. if you read the ingredients list, it reads like a superfood list, right? And it's everything you'd want to be putting into your body. So it's not all these words you can't pronounce. It's not all these fillers. It's really, these are great food sources that you want to be eating and putting in your body. I say when I look at it, I'm like, this is how I would make like an energy bar at home. Right. I would want to add all these things. So I really encourage other people, and for myself too, this is why I love it. I encourage them to utilize it as something that is going to, first of all, help balance your blood sugars, right? If you're someone who gets real hangry, or you try to go a long time without eating, or something like that, this is perfect. It doesn't have a lot of fake ingredients in it. It's, like I said, it's not a lot of fillers. It doesn't sit heavy in your stomach. So for me, and I was just telling Jessie this, if I have a long training session and it's been 3 hours or so before I've eaten, I can start to kind of feel my blood sugar drop a little. And I want something, but I don't want something heavy, sitting in my stomach. I'll pop one of these in, and it's perfect. I feel better. I feel energized. I'm ready to keep working out. And so that's what I'll encourage a lot of the people I work with to utilize, right? You don't need something heavy, but if you start to feel like, man, I'm just getting hangry, I'm starting to feel really blah, yeah, pop a Modballs. This is going to give you a little bit more energy. It's going to help balance those blood sugars, and you're just going to feel better overall. And it's more micronutrient dense than popping in some like gummy bears or and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a time and place for these simple sugars, right? Absolutely. But also I would preferably I would prefer that I would eat something like a Modballs instead.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, if I wanted to continue being lazy with my cooking, can I get that variety from, like, we've got bean sprouts, lentil sprouts, broccoli, cucumber, kale, cabbage, parsley root, onion, cauliflower, asparagus, like celery, garlic. Like,
there's so much.
Can I stay lazy and just get my micronutrients from this?
Yeah.
For real?
I had a gentleman, a male athlete, and he really, he just doesn't like a ton of variety, and he likes just his plain foods, right? Not a lot of veggies, not a lot. I'm like, where's the color? Where's the stuff? And that's fine at different parts of the season, but I recommended to him, I said, why don't you have like 2 Modballs a day? This is at least going to get you, and that's my way of secretly getting him a few more micronutrients to eat some of those foods, and I guess if you've got a kid, or if you've got someone like a picky eater, first of all, the peanut butter ones taste like trail mix, so people love them, right? So even the pickiest of eaters, I feel like you can get to eat them for a little bit more micronutrient quality too in their day.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I just listed a ton of vegetables that are in there. You don't taste any of them. Yeah. When I first tried one, I got scared because I was like, this tastes like candy. Is this okay?
Yeah.
I don't know about this. But like, looking at the ingredients, those are the things I'm also obsessed with, like, getting a ton of vegetables.
Yep.
But like I said, I'm lazy on getting the variety. And so I'm actually really kind of excited right now about the fact that I can continue being lazy with my cooking.
Yeah. And if you look at the fat sources that are in it, many of the other protein and energy bars out there that you see, if you read the ingredients label, you're going to see a lot of palm oils, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. Not on here. You're going to see the fat sources that you want. MCT oils, obviously the coconut oil. I believe there's the flax seed in there, right?
I mean, exactly what you listed before. Pumpkin seeds, and did I see walnut? Definitely almond, pistachio, flax. I always hear such good things about flax and hemp and chia seeds.
Yeah, the chia seeds, right? So from an overall perspective, the calorie content, the macronutrient ratio, and the micronutrients, I truly believe it's a very good source of food for someone to be taking in, whether you're an athlete, whether you are a general population, just trying to get fit, change your body composition, improve your overall health. It's probably one of the better grab and go items that I've ever seen.
I've been crushing them all week. So, Jen, as we close out, the Jedburghs in World War II had to do 3 things every day to set the conditions for their success. They had to be able to shoot, they had to be able to move, and they had to be able to communicate. Those are their foundations, or their habits, if you will. What are the 3 things that you do every day to set the conditions for success in your world?
It's a wonderful question. The 3 things I do is when I get up, I immediately go outside. I take my dogs outside and I get outdoor light. Even not having them this weekend, I immediately walked outside just to get some sunshine and light on my face. So that's number 1.
I keep hearing about the value of that, setting your clock, your circadian rhythm.
Yes. But having dogs is a blessing to do that, right? So I have to get out there. The second one I do is I always have like my morning drink. Right, so whether it's a favorite flavor of a greens powder, and mine is a chocolate one. And by the way, there's nothing magical about a greens powder. I just set my morning like that all the time, and I travel with it, right? So that's what I do is I travel with one thing that I start my day out with, and that is something very simple. It's like got to be something like a chocolate thing in the morning. So if I start my day without the greens powder, it's the chocolate salt LMNT. Not to like throw another company out there, but I'm just saying that's what I do, right? And I keep it the same no matter what. So I start my day out like that. And then let's see, the third thing I do. Those are the 2. I have the same breakfast every day. I've had the same breakfast every day for about 5 or 6 years, and I travel with it. I do buckwheat cereal. And I buy a new one and I travel with it. I even traveled to Brazil with it 2 years ago when I competed at the CrossFit Championship down there. So that with blueberries, and even that time I took dried blueberries with me. I'm not kidding. I am a creature of habit, and that's what makes me successful. And then I put protein powder in it and a little bit of almond butter. So those are my 3 things I think I've been doing probably for the past 5 years or so. And I take all that stuff everywhere with me so that I can, well, not my dogs all the time, but I still go outside. But the other items, I'm so weird. I pack that stuff and I make sure that I have that so I can start my day.
Well, I'd say it's working.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Jen, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. You're truly an inspiration to so many who are out there coming into this sport, who want to progress, who want to come in and do some great things for themselves, their communities, their organizations. Thanks so much for leading the way.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
American Jedburghs went out to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As a former member of Special Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast donates a percentage of all proceeds to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.